Well, I think it's an inevitable development. And what saddens me is that this has got caught up in some lot of eye-catching but flimsy policies, like getting the Navy to turn back illegal immigrants to save Boris's skin, because this business with the BBC is a long-running saga. And when I was had four stabs at being Minister for Broadcasting in the 80s and early 90s, and all that time we were trying to persuade the BBC that they had to reduce their manpower, stop their overmanning. It was always a thing we always said about the BBC. When they had a problem, the management floor at the BBC would say, "Assistant heads must roll." And there was this sense that the BBC was living high on the hog, and they didn't have to get efficient. They didn't have to become really cost effective in the way that, say, your station has to be cost effective, because they could rely on the license fee payer. Now, I've always hoped that that would be sorted out, but it hasn't been. And when I wrote a piece for the Mail on Sunday that you may have seen
Yeah,
on Sunday
very good, by the way,
about
very
it, well,
good.
thank you. That's really kind. Yeah, and I said to them, they have researchers there, dig out some of the more grotesque examples of wokery. Like you can't get Little Britain now on BBC iPlayer because it's deemed to be inappropriate stuff. That the head of diversity, a part-time job at the BBC, is paid more than the director general, and the whole thing. You suddenly think to yourself that this organisation, which should be in the middle of the fairway, it should be the way in which Britain presents itself to the world, moderate and sensible, is still out on the fringes, and increasingly out on the fringes. And I'm thinking, why on earth, therefore, are they allowed to do all of this at the expense of the taxpayer, or rather the payer of the license fee, which is a poll tax? We were all very condemnatory of the poll tax when Margaret Thatcher brought it in. But everybody has to pay who owns a television. Everyone has to pay the BBC license fee. Although, as we well know, an increasing number of people don't watch the BBC or listen to it. So, I think the game is up, really, for the license fee. And what Nadine Dorries is doing is, first of all, freezing it, and secondly, saying that for the remainder of the period, the BBC charter is renewed. I can't remember, it's every 15 or every 20 years. I'm getting old,
Yeah.
but basically that will soon run out, this present charter renewal. And when that charter renewal runs out, the question then has to be, should the license fee continue? And I was a passionate supporter of the license fee, but I've changed my mind because the circumstances do not allow me any longer to think the license fee is a good thing. I think it's a bad thing.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure that we can be confident that the people who run the BBC are running it properly. Now, of course, they're using the same tactics they use every time there is an attempt, usually by a Conservative administration, to cut back the amount of money they get, to try to get it to save money. They say, we are pared to the bone, and if you make us make any more cuts, and if you don't give us a license fee rise, then it will affect popular programmes like Line of Duty. The fact of the matter is, that's just not true. That the number of middle management executives with six-figure salary jobs that don't add up to a hill of beans, that don't mean anything, are frankly obscene. They can start cutting back their staff and save lots and lots of money. They'll also attack Nadine Dorries. They'll call her a Philistine, a woman who doesn't understand the arts. But the main point is what Nadine is standing up for, and you and I agree with her, is this this ludicrous anachronism called the BBC
Yeah.
license, and that these BBC executives, Tim Davie, the Director General, if they don't approach these negotiations with a spirit of compromise, they're going to lose everything, because it is absurd that a modern 21st century country should be threatening grandmothers with jail because they haven't paid the licensing with which they need to watch Strictly Come Dancing. It's mad.
But you see, I think that it's Tim Davie that really persuades me that the game is up for the license fee. Not because he's a bad man. He isn't. He says all the right things. And, he has a chairman in Richard Sharp who was, worked very hard with the Conservative chancellors in his time. These are not inadequate men. But the fact of the matter is that despite everything Tim Davie says, despite the support that comes from the chairman, he is like King Canute. He may say all the right things, but all the while, the waves are not obeying him. The waves of wokeness are, his chair is bobbing up and down on waves of wokeness. And I mean, I really was depressed to discover, respected broadcasters like Michael Burke, who has complained that The Moral Maze, a perfectly inoffensive program on the BBC, there are certain topics they're now not allowed to discuss. And I don't think people should be paying a license fee for a body which cannot control its staff and cannot actually present a moderate, sensible face of Britain. And what else are we to do? I mean, if they won't respond to reasoned argument, the only way that they will respond is to cut the money. And if you cut the money, then suddenly a lot of the BBC will have to either get a commercial backing subscription, or they're dead. And people will say, well, that's a bit hard, isn't it? But you see, when I was defending the license fee back in the 80s and early 90s, there was ITV and BBC, and that was about it. Now we have satellite television. Now we have a whole range of available programs that mean people no longer can say, if we didn't have the BBC, that whole strand of programming we won't get, because it's not true.
And if Tim Davie and his buddies at the BBC, as they constantly maintain, really truly believe that they are delivering a world-beating broadcasting service to the grateful people of Britain, then what is their problem? Why do they need the license fee to be compulsory? Because their service is so good that if they offered it up for subscription, we'd all pay it. Or do they fear? Do they fear that we wouldn't? So their service isn't so good, is it?
The BBC is not bad value at £159 if you use it. But the trouble is, you see, an awful lot of young people, they no longer watch conventional television the way they used to. So in other words, the broadcasting environment has become so diffuse in terms of the offerings that come from so many different places that the BBC standing there in the middle, commanding a license fee, a compulsory levy on anybody who owns a television, is no longer really appropriate. And it's especially inappropriate. I return to what is really the central thrust of my case. Instead of making the BBC more effective in creating quality programming and being the embodiment of moderate, sensible Britain going forward, it's increasingly taken over by extremists within its own ranks who intimidate the management, despite the many tiers of management there are to stand firm against them, intimidate the management, and all manner of wokeness pervades the BBC. And you think, why are we paying for this compulsorily?
Indeed, and in a little while I'm going to talk to Stephen Glover from the Daily Mail, who had the onerous task of listening to every second of the Today program.
I've read his stuff. I know.
And we're going to talk about.
It shocked him.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk. I'm going to talk to Stephen about the bias that, of course, Tim Davie and all his fellow executives say absolutely doesn't exist. They are living on Planet BBC. It is a world of their own. David, always excellent to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time. David Mellor, political commentator and former Culture Secretary